Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Bill Faeth Unfiltered. I've got a very special guest today that I'm excited to share with you. So, him and I have met multiple times at conferences. We've spoken together at different varying events, and we both have a passion for skiing. And I'm kind of migrating to becoming a snowboarder. Maybe I'll talk with him about that a little bit. But Justin Ford from Breezeway, actually, the first time I really got to spend some time with him, I invited him to one of my mastermind meetings last year, and we're going to talk about this as I bring him up in the podcast. And he kind of scared the shit out of me, to be honest with you. So, brand new 12 bedroom, 9 bath that we had built a basement in, done a tremendous amount of upgrades. Biggest house on Smith Lake in Alabama. I've got probably 35, 40 of my mastermind members there. And Justin was supposed to do like a 30-minute walkthrough that took about 90 minutes. And I'm going to let him explain to you what he found. And I love being the guinea pig because what he did is he made my property safer. And that is something that I had not been to that property since construction had been completed. And there were a lot of things that weren't done, a lot of things that we had missed. As like many of us, we rushed through getting these properties open for summer. And we opened actually on, I think it was July 3rd. And we probably shouldn't have been open that early. And thank God the month after that, I'd had like three or four guests that had come. And I'll share this story with you with Justin, but I literally roll up in my boat from one of my other houses and he's there before I arrive and he's already got my Traeger dismantled. And a lot of us think that having a Traeger is better than, having a propane or a charcoal barbecue. But when I saw the grease and what was in there, my mind was blown. So I think just sit back and be ready. I would take some notes. Your mind's probably going to be blown over the next 15, 20, 30 minutes, however long this podcast ends up being. But what I can tell you is Justin is an absolute wealth of knowledge and a godsend for our industry, and he cares. That's the most important thing. So, without further ado, let me bring up my new friend, Justin Ford from Breezeway. How are you, buddy?
It's good to see you, Bill. And we finally met in person almost about a year ago. Actually, it was the Michigan conference, and I don't want to forget. I put you on stage before you got on stage with some of your reels. So I've admired that. You got a lot going on, but you've kept safety in as a piece of your message for
I
quite
think I
some.
put out a reel like 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, and it was about my signage and stuff at my lake property, about dock rules and, things of that nature. If I remember correctly, does that sound right? Was that the clip
Yeah,
that
that
you had?
sounds right. And I think, you've been working with proper insurance for a long time too. And I think that's had an influence on things as well. And I work closely with proper. So it's good that we're all collectively keeping this moving forward.
It does. I mean, and my gosh, I mean, I think I get around a little. I thought I got around a lot until I started hanging out with Pace Morby. And that guy is like he lives on an airplane. But then I saw your schedule that you posted someplace, maybe on LinkedIn or something like that, of your like event schedule and that type of stuff, maybe last week. And you've got like 30 or 40 places that you're going to be in the next 6 or 7 months. You're on the go.
I'm on the go. There's a lot going on. When they just released, the top markets for Airbnb, Australia's in there. Australia doesn't have anybody really focused on safety, so I'm over there. I'm over in the UK, doing stuff.
Does any place have anybody focused on safety outside of you?
Not that I've met. I'd like to meet them, because I'm not trying to be a one world, one man show here. So
Right. Well, you have. I want to dive right in, and before we start getting into what you do and all that type of stuff, because you were generous enough to take your personal time and build a safety course,
yeah.
and that I believe every single STR owner should go through. Can you let's just start with that, and I want you to kind of why did you build this safety course? Why are you doing what you're doing? And then I want you to kind of, after you give your backstory, explain what people are going to learn in that safety course. And we'll incentivize them with the potential discounts with proper and insurance and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I'll give my boss at Breezeway some credit, Jeremy Gall. Back during COVID, I was doing this mobile, and we quickly realized there's no way that I'm going to be traveling around during COVID. And of course, in March, April, we were even wondering, our short-term rental is going to survive this. And so that was what I did during COVID is I built this safety course. And amazingly, we just learned recently, it didn't even dawn on me. It's the number one largest certification program of any type in the STR industry. There's all kinds of people trying to do different certifications. And I didn't realize that we've had more people go through that, like way more, like we're miles ahead than any other type of certification program anyone's trying to do. So that's
Well,
pretty awesome.
how do you get people to stop and think about safety? I mean, because it's like insurance. It's, hey, I want the I'm not paying proper. I mean, they're like 3 times more than everybody else, and then you have this Brianna Chavis, issue like at my conference last year, and man, I mean, it's just how do you get people to stop and really think about it? Because short-term rentals are a shit show when it comes to safety. I mean, and I was one of them. Like when you went through my property, right?
The first thing is, and it's something that's missing between the two of us right now, and that's a woman. The first thing is women. Women have helped elevate this. I'll give them a ton of credit. 72% of people who take the safety course are women. And those are my biggest followers. I don't think it's because of my looks. I think it's because they get it. A lot of us guys, we're pretty easy going. Yeah, yeah, let them fall down the stairs. They'll learn to hold on to the handrail next time. It toughens them up. And I think that often is the case. So certainly that's been a key piece of it. And the other big key piece are unfortunately all the negative stories. There's all kinds of negative incidents. We had a couple people die in New Hampshire here recently, from carbon monoxide. This stuff makes big national headlines, and I think people start to go, wait a minute, I don't want that to happen to me. What do I got to do?
So I remember when you were coming about 2 weeks ahead of time before you came to that mastermind, meeting that I mentioned in the pre-roll there, and I remember I got a text message from Kim Fitzpatrick, and
Yes,
she's like, "Hey, do you have not CO2, but do you have CO monitors?" I think there was a post about CO2. That's in your beer, right?
that's right. CO2
Um,
is in your beer.
she's like, "Hey, do you have CO monitors, in the property?" And I said, "Yes." And she's like, "Do you have one in the room that you have Justin assigned to?" And then I had to think about it, and then I had to ask my wife, Bria, and then she's like, "No, I don't think there's one in that room." And I texted her back. I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "He won't sleep in a room unless there's a CO monitor, and he travels with them." And I said, "Oh, shit." And that's when I knew it was kind of on like Donkey Kong when you were coming, to my property, and, I learned a lot. Do you remember the deck? The stairs?
I remember the deck. I just want to go back to the beginning though. I showed up at the house. No one else was there yet. You were off at your other property, and I walked in, and it said the door would be open, and I'm like, okay. So I come walking in, and the first thing I heard was a beep, and I'm like, that's a chirp of a smoke alarm. I actually thought you had set me up. Now I'll give you credit. You hadn't been there yet, so you didn't know because I'm sure you would have addressed this. But I showed up, and the smoke alarm was hanging off of the ceiling outside of my bedroom. I'm like, all right, Bill's testing me. He wants to see if
I'm
I
not that smart. I can't take credit for that.
yeah. There was one in the closet upstairs chirping, and it was like, all right, what's going on here? This is pretty crazy.
Well, I mean, I think that's probably pretty normal, especially when you go in and buy a property that was built in 2003 or 4, whenever that was, and you do a renovation. And I remember I didn't even know there weren't smoke alarms in the basement. I mean, the guy that did my renovation, he's done 3 houses for me. And I called him after you pointed that out to me, and I'm like, WTF, Chad? I mean, how do we not have any smoke alarms? He's all, you didn't ask for them. I just made the assumption, right? And there's no codes on that lake is one of the other problem. He's like, we don't put them in anywhere. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah. It's tough, and it's hard because everyone just assumes that somebody is. I do it. I mean, we all assume things all the time. We assume that, someone who built our car, you tighten the lug nuts on there. We assume that when we get on a plane, we're gonna land. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we assume, and
Right side up or upside down like yesterday?
upside down. Yeah,
What is me and you fly all the time. I don't mean to get this off the rails, but I'm starting to get a little bit apprehensive with all this shit that's going on with all these planes.
Here's the quick thing on that, by the way. The thing that really frustrated me about that yesterday is there's a guy who's filming getting off the plane. The flight attendant saying, "Don't take your bags with you," and yelling at this guy to stop filming. And he posted it.
Yeah, but let me get my Instagram moment as I'm going down the slide.
There was an incident a year ago in Japan, and in Japan, on 280 people made it off a plane. There's no documentation of it, and no one had baggage with them. And so it's just a reminder over here in the US, we're not always as tuned into safety as the rest of the world is.
That guy's
A lot
follower
of
count on Instagram was more important than get it off the plane alive.
exactly. It's like we don't need to see that you died or that you made it. We just want to make sure. I mean, if that, just so you know, Bill, if I'd been on the plane, that guy's phone would have been crushed. I would have nailed it. When knock it off, dude. Let's get off the plane.
Oh god, that's amazing. Let's talk about what brought you to being the safety guy in the industry. What's your background? I know it, but I'm sure there's a lot of my listeners that don't know who Justin Ford is or what you did prior to getting started.
It makes sense and it doesn't. I mean, I served in the US Coast Guard, but I was a ship's navigator. Still, we went out and rescued people. And part of my job on the ship was, in between things, I had to make sure the smoke detectors and the fire extinguishers were okay on the ship I was on. People had life jackets. I wouldn't say safety was like driven into my head then, but it was. And then in my community, when I started the vacation rental agency that I had in Maine, there was different things you could do. Hey, join your local select board, help out of the school committee. I just happened to bump into the fire chief and he said, hey, we're looking for a few guys. So I joined the fire department. So my background in safety is loosely from being a firefighter for 15 years, loosely being in the Coast Guard, but mostly from running what was basically at the time the largest vacation rental company in the entire Northeast. We managed as many as 600 homes, had 60 boat rentals. We had a wedding and event property. I actually performed wedding ceremonies and we had all kind. We did real estate, so lots of crazy things. And I had an incident, and I learned from it. And went, wait a minute, how's everybody else supposed to know this? If this happened to me, and I think I'm a kind of smart guy.
But I mean, it kind of don't you think there's a little bit of safety in your fiber? I mean, we were talking about your skis, right? You mentioned the safety straps on your skis when you were a kid, where most boys are just jumping on anything that's a piece of wood and going down the hill, right?
There's safety in my fiber, but I'll be the first to acknowledge there are times where my wife will see me up on top of a chair getting something and going, Justin, do you realize if you fall and die right now, I'm going to have to explain why a safety expert did something stupid? So I do. I have to be mindful and careful.
At least your wife, addresses that. Mine's like, "Hey, is a life insurance policy up to date?"
Right. Right. And it's hard because, people like you and I, we have pretty good common sense. And I think you and I could probably comfortably get up on on a step stool and nothing's really bad going to happen to us. It's when you put people in these short-term rentals and they get vacation brain, it just changes everything. Their mind's not there. And people just lose common sense when they do.
I want you to elaborate on vacation brain because I think it was really the eye opener when we were in Alabama when you started talking about setting up your property for drunk people,
Yeah.
right? And I don't think anybody in that room, maybe Kim, because she was pretty close with you and seen you probably more than anybody else. But I remember the discussions afterwards, like John Hodge coming up to me and a few people, and they're like, man, we never really thought about that. But that is, and we do the same thing. I thought if I go to the beach, the only time I will ever day drink is like when I'm skiing. I always have a beer, at lunch with a bowl of chili or whatever it is. At the beach, I'll have a couple of Pacificos or whatever if my wife and I are sitting out on the beach, but I like never ever day drink. I'm a wine guy at night, but when we're on vacation, it all changes. It's that vacation brain. So how do we think about that? How do we set up our properties for drunk people to be safe?
Well, and that's a really key thing. And just to quickly back that up, we actually have facts. There's travel surveys. Everybody who, the travel industry in some areas is like the number one thing. I mean, Italy, number one cause of income there is tourism. And, Spain,
Wine.
Orlando. I mean, there's markets. So they do surveys. And when they've surveyed people, it turns out 75% of people in North America acknowledge that they will drink on vacation. So we know they're going to do it. What's crazy is half of those people said they don't drink at home. So wait a minute, they're coming to your home that they're not familiar with, and they're going to get drunk when they don't even do that in their own home. So
We
that
just need to remember those are the people that actually go out on New Year's Eve, right? Where the professionals stay at home and they're going to have their own New Year's Eve in our short-term rental.
Exactly. So we've got that, and then vacation brain. Best example I have of vacation brain. That was about a year ago. I was in Idaho. We'd just been to a hot spring and stopped at this little gas station restaurant. And my wife was with me, and she likes, she likes the T-shirt with the name, and they had the T-shirt there for the hot springs. And I'm wandering along, and finally, I kind of turn and I look at this guy, and he goes, "Can I help you?" And he's cooking a hamburger, and I'm like, no, I'm just looking at this T-shirt." And he goes, "Okay, well, you're in the kitchen right now, and that's my T-shirt hanging up." And I'm like, "Oh." And I looked around, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Man, you got vacation brain." I'm like, "You know about that?" And he goes, "It happens all the time. People just start wandering around the general store side, and before you know it, they're in the kitchen." And that's what happened to you. And I was like, "Holy crap, I fell for it." And that's true. That's what our guests are doing. They're wandering in, and, "Oh, look at the view, look at the lake. What are we having for dinner?" And before you know it, they're falling out down the stairs, tripping over things that, rugs that are not placed properly. There's all kinds of things that happen to them.
So let's dive into some of those things, Justin. Like, what are the, I mean, you mentioned rugs, the corners, tripping hazards. A lot of us don't think about those things. And they're almost every bed and couch now has rugs under it or whatever. One of the big things, takeaways for me, for you being there, and I think my wife did a good job of placing it, but like, I never, I think she does. You talk about the women being the ones that go through the safety course. I never thought about fire extinguisher placement, and most of us are hiding them because they're an eyesore. We don't want Andrew Keller photos with, fire extinguishers in them. So we put them in a cabinet or we put them under the stove, or under the sink. And the stove's here and the sink's here. Well, stove on the left, sink on the right, but yet the exit's that way, right? And it's the wrong way. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that we're making as hosts?
Well, let's talk about the fire extinguisher quickly. Most short-term rentals, a majority, I know we always like to talk about that they're in an urban market, but a lot of them are still at least 10 minutes from a fire response. And that property you had on Smith Lake, we did an evaluation. We estimated it would have been 20 minutes before a fire department shows up there because it's a volunteer department. They all got to go get the trucks, and then you're a long way off the
It's
path.
a 10-15 minute drive once they get there.
Exactly. So, what do you got there in the meantime to save your property? Well, you have a fire extinguisher. So let's look at it. Look at the facts. We know from surveys that are out there that only 14% of your renters in a fire are actually even going to try. It's even going to cross their mind to go, "Hey, let's use a fire extinguisher and put this fire out." So 14% of them. So that's a very small percentage of your guests. And if you don't make it easy for them, it's going to be a big goose egg. It's me zero. So you've got to remember that that fire extinguisher is a tool you're giving your guests to save your home. You're trying to make it easy for them. And I think a lot of people don't have that mentality. They don't want to see it. Everything I've ever seen, I talked to people who said, "Hey, 2 years ago, I heard you, we installed fire extinguishers. I don't even notice them anymore." That's what I hear everybody say is that, yeah, at first it was an eyesore. We got used to it. I don't even think about it anymore. And thank God we just came in and noticed it was empty. It turns out our last guest used one and they didn't even tell us that they had a
It's funny. It used to be, like I said earlier, that I didn't want them in the photo because I wanted Andrew Keller photos, right? Well, now I actually want them in the photo. And so what I've done since you came to the mastermind is kind of tried to flip the switch. And I think the safety component is the most underutilized marketing tool in our industry.
It is.
Whether it's your badge when you go through the safety course or aligning with Breezeway or showing your fire extinguishers, now for me, that's part of my marketing mix because I think there's, and you said it earlier, you know, I don't think I have two girls. I don't think about those things. My wife is just hardcore with all the safety components. And, she was the one immediately when I told her about the text message conversation with Kim Fitzpatrick and you and the CO monitor. She immediately went to Amazon and started ordering them and put them in every bedroom, in every house, and at that time, I hadn't spent that couple of days with you. I'm like, "Holy shit, you just spent, like, $1,700 on these $50 whatever monitors," and she's like, "Yep. Well, what if Justin ends up going to one of our other properties? We don't wanna be all over Instagram without CO machines." We were joking about that, but it's the reality, and I think that, and I'm not saying this because you're here, but I do think that the safety component of our properties, whether it's, child locks or cabinets or fire extinguishers or whatever it is, COs, the big discussion in my Facebook group about the linked, well, the CO2 machines, the CO machines, and the linked what smoke detectors. I couldn't think of it for a second. So, what are some of the other big things that we're missing?
Yeah, and I wanna just knock on something that you just said there, because that marketing piece is key. You and I are both generally trying to reach an audience that is either investing in short-term rentals or hosts or owns or manages short-term rentals. That's what we're trying to do. But I'm kinda getting scrapped off to the side lately. I'm actually getting a lot of people reaching out to me going, "Hey, we were looking to go on vacation and we couldn't find any Airbnbs that looked safe. Do you have like a listing site of ones that are by people you've educated?" And I see that a lot. I had a friend reach out to me recently. "Hey, Justin, we looked on Airbnb for 2 days. We actually gave up on going on vacation. We couldn't find a property that we thought was safe for our family." And so, hearing more and more of that tells me that there's a lot of people out there that are doing that. And there's even a survey that shows 63% of people who've never stayed in an Airbnb, the number one reason is because of safety concerns. So they'd rather stay in a hotel. And those are people we haven't even been marketing, getting our house to market to. So
Well, it's kinda crazy. I mean, like, that property, you came to a mine, and there's a lot of rural areas I'm sure that you go to. There's 0 regulation. There's no permitting, there's no inspections, there's nothing. And, there's no building codes. And, I mean, for me, I'm not an Airbnb guy, I'm a Marriott guy. I mean, I typically will stay at a Marriott every place, I travel to because and not necessarily because of the safety, that's it's honestly, it's not in the forefront of my mind, but the consistency is consistency in the rooms, what to expect, check-in, pricing, blah, blah, blah. But I think safety is a part of that. I just have a different feeling. Like I'm staying in a brand new hotel I've never stayed at tomorrow night in Manhattan, right? On the upper east side. And I believe who owns the hotel, who the type of hotel it is, that it will just automatically be safe because of the regulations. And I don't know what the percentage is, but I got to imagine we probably have more rural areas that are unregulated than we do geographically mileage wise that are regulated in the
oh,
United States.
absolutely. My right now, it's about 2% of markets have some sort of safety regulations or inspections that are required. And some of that, it's amazing to see how detrimental it is. You've seen, Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, that market right now has severe safety regulations coming into place. And as you've seen some of the listings, there, I'm sure one of them caught your eye where you're like, wow, they're offering a $60,000 seller credit to sell this property right now. I'm all over it. And then you realize it's because
You got to put in sprinklers.
they got to put in sprinklers. So it's like, hey, there, that's gonna if it's happening in that market, everyone's copying everybody. It's gonna happen in other markets. So
You'll appreciate this. I don't really like it right now, but my big property I bought in Montana where I had B&B camp at, I have now made 6 mortgage payments on that, $19,000 a piece. So you can people at home can do the math. I have no STR permit, and I've jumped through all the holes, but there's one thing that I haven't been able to figure out yet, and it's a safety issue. I don't have enough room in there's 2 driveways in the driveway to my main house for a fire engine for the Whitefish Fire Department to turn around, right? And I don't know without buying the lot behind me that or tearing out part of my house that I can create enough room for that fire engine to turn around. So septic I've got over, water samplings. I mean, it's crazy how stringent, and this is at the county and state level, not the really local municipality level, but it's the fire engine just having because they won't back out or three-point turn. They have to literally be able to completely turn around. And those are something I'd never thought about. But that's my hangup that's cost me almost, $120,000 without being able to generate revenue in something that I was not aware of beforehand.
and the thing is they can just add this when they want to. There are people who bought and invested in a property in Gatlinburg 2 years ago and have just started making their mortgage payments, but like you, and now they're being told you've got to spend $100,000 to install a sprinkler system. You need to put in new egress windows. You need to build an area for your grill 15 feet from the property, and they don't have 15 feet. And as I said, this needs to serve as a warning to everybody. It's going to happen. We're only at 2%. I think before this decade's out, we're going to be into the 30, 40% range.
Right. Let's talk about grills for a second. propane versus charcoal versus, pellet, plug-in electrical and positioning. Because I know you do not like those things underneath the patio and right up against the house.
No, and we've seen people ask me all the time. I've got a great video where they're like, "Really? Why do you need 9 feet of vertical clearance above a grill?" And I'm like, "Take an 80% fat burger and put it on the grill and squash it and watch how high the flames go. And then imagine that you're not watching it for a few minutes." So
And is that the same with charcoal, wood burning, propane, and pellet, or no?
that is, and that's why any grill shouldn't have that. And it's crazy. The state of Massachusetts doesn't allow grills on decks. It's against the law. It's a $500 fine. And then, I go to places like, where you hang out in Montana, and you look at a condo and every single deck's got a grill. Well, they've had fires, and one of the worst fires in our industry was in Missouri, and it was from a grill on a deck. It burned down a $13 million condo complex a couple of years ago. So when it comes to grills, though, here's the real deal, and you see it all the time. Go to a state park. You never hear about fires at a state park, and it's because it's a charcoal grill. It's brainless. It's in a stand. You put a bag in it. You light the bag, and it goes. There's no exposures. And we're seeing a lot of STRs put those in. Now, are those nice? You want to put your $50 steak that you just got that's been dry aged and shipped over from Japan? No, you don't want to do that. So I
How
know
do I do that at a super property?
you can't do that at a super property. So then you've got to set up, the right grilling station. But if you're going to set up this beautiful grilling station at a super property and have propane, you can do that. You just got to add in a few safety features. One, get it away from exposures. Two, make sure you've got a timer on it. I've seen so many grill fires where the guests don't know or forget to turn off the grill. The worst thing you want to have is a grill that's running all night long, getting super hot and eventually catching on fire. So you got to have those timers that limit them to 1 hour of use. Simple little things. They'll annoy a guest. They'll be cooking and step away for a minute and then go, "Why's the grill out? Oh my God, the timer ran out." I get it. But that's what you've got to do.
Awesome. I mean, we're almost at 30 minutes, which is like double my normal length. I know you gotta get on the road. You got like 1 or 2 days of powder, by the way, I assume, where you're going, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm an East Coast guy. I'm an East Coast skier, but I've turned into kind of a snob. I grew up at Sugarloaf in Maine, which is a fantastic mountain. Sunday River, obviously, a lot of people have investment properties there.
You ever
But
done the T-bar at Sunday River?
oh, heck yeah. Yeah.
I've never done a T-bar, I'm kinda scared of it.
T-bar, my daughter loves to get on the I'm like, "I'm 6'5". I'm like, "I don't wanna get on the T." "No, dad, let's do the T-bar." I'm like, "Oh, great."
I thought you were like 6'7". I thought you were taller than me.
I'm 6'5", and, I've skied over in, like, in the Swiss mountains, Zermatt. I've been on the tallest lift service in the world where people are passing out around you, and you're like, "What is going on?" And it's because of altitude, and they didn't adjust before they got there. But definitely, the Colorado mountains are nice. But when it comes to, just the quick thing, because of the time's run out, safety, smoke alarm's the single most important item in your property. Number one cause of injury are slip, trips, and falls. Our friends at Proper Insurance tell us that. They've been great, by the way, of sharing stats in the industry that really help us focus in on what we need to focus in on. I think they've said 3% of their claims are fire related. So while that's really important and people can die, certainly it's the falls. It's not having a handrail. Lighting is a big one. We know 60% of claims happen in the first hour of arrival and usually at night. So a lot of people don't visit their property at night and go, "Wait a minute, oh my gosh, I don't have good lighting here." And by the time all the, like you said, your driveway's full of cars, that last car in, how are they getting to the house, weaving through all the cars and the lights being blocked by the SUV that the guy has parked close to it? So what can we do to improve lighting?
We put a lot of outdoor lighting in, like the Costco Tommy Bahama light path lights to try to achieve that. And one of the things I actually did that we started that Smith Lake property after you were there talking about lighting, almost every outlet in hallways now at every house and one in every bedroom has in my and I hate it. I unplug it actually when I sleep in the bedroom, but the motion sensor light, like the LEDs that comes on as you're walking through that hallway. And I literally got a call yesterday for that Smith Lake property in the basement, that hallway going from the family room to all the bedrooms. The lights were out, and I think we have bad switches or something down there. And I immediately told my wife, call the handyman, get him there ASAP. We it's a safety issue. I said, She's like, I get it, but remember, we have 3 of those LED lights in there as well. And I'm like, well, thank God we have that because then it would be pitch black, at night. So I think a lot of those small things are things that I've learned from you. I've been hosting a lot of properties for quite a while, and we just don't think about them. They're not top of mind for whatever. So I really appreciate you being that advocate, and especially all the time you spend on the road away from your family, at all the conferences, all the events. I mean, I think I saw even on what you posted the other day, like you're going to, was it the Montana Firefighters Association event or something like that?
Yeah, I actually train the government side of our industry. I do a lot of work with NFPA. I'm in all these big meetings with the regulators. Airbnb usually has someone there who's like a former congressman who does their government affairs. So I get to see, at a very high level. I've been doing presentations to Parliament in London that they've implemented into the UK guide. When you go stay in the United Kingdom, some of the new safety features in Airbnbs, I help commit to those. So I'm very proud of that. But we'll give a nugget because you just talked about lighting. I'm going to send you a link that you can put in your store. I know you've got a really good store that has a lot of cool things. A brand new product just came out from Snap Power. I just filmed for them about 2 weeks ago in North Carolina, and it's actually you plug it into your outlet. It becomes the outlet cover, which is Snap Power does that. But this new one that they just released has a battery in it. So not only is it a motion light, but if the power goes out, it'll light up and provide a pathway for people to get out. It's super inexpensive. I feel like every STR should have those.
I love that. One other thing before I let you go, I did not have in that property as well, and I think a lot of people, even if they do have it, they put it in the wrong spot, which I didn't learn until I didn't have this in any of my properties, and I have a lot of two-story and even three-story properties, and those were the safety ladders at the windows. Can you talk about that for a quick second before we go?
Yeah, there's a cool video. I think I have it on a reel somewhere of a guy in like the 1920s jumping from over 20 feet and showing the way that you need to land and survive. So assumptions always been made that a human being jumping from 20 feet, we're going to break a bone, but we're going to survive. Above that, we're not. And so if you've got a situation where your guests are going to need to escape a property quickly in a fire, and maybe they've been drinking, they just heard the smoke alarm a little too late, having an escape ladder for them is a great idea. They're like 40 or $50. There's a great company that just came out. It's called Rescue Ready. I'll send you that link as well. It's a couple firefighters. They were just on Shark Tank, and they got money, and they're starting to grow. They're beautiful. Bria would love these. They actually fit underneath the window and have a cover. They fit as part
I
of
know
the,
exactly what you're talking about.
and so then they can just flip the guest, just put a sticker on there that says "in fire," remove cover. They just pull the cover off, throw it out, and they can climb out and get out safely. So you owe that to your guests. I mean, it's a super property. They should be super safe.
Agreed. Don't spend the 50 or $60 and then put it in a closet 15 feet away. It's gotta be right under the window, correct?
Exactly.
And it's rescue ready, folks. Literally, everybody, Facebook, Google, YouTube, they're all listening. So just say rescue ready, rescue ready, rescue ready 3 times, and it'll show up in your Instagram feed today.
Yeah, exactly.
Justin, thank you so much. I'm glad we got to finally do this. I know it's been in the making for a while. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you for what you do. And as a friend, I wish I was going with you today because I think where I'm going on Sunday, we're not going to get any powder for the time that we're there. But you and I have got to put a ski date on the calendar
Oh,
at
it's
some
gonna
point.
happen. It's gonna happen, and I appreciate opportunity. I'll see everybody at the STR Wealth Conference in July with you, and hope that.
I'm gonna give you a platform. So Justin will be educating at the STR Wealth Conference. It is a huge deal, and I know a lot of you guys. Well, I want to go see Bill about super properties or marketing or revenue management. Don't miss his session, and don't sleep on his safety course either. Send me a link to that. I'm gonna put the Rescue Ready. I'll put the new Snap-ons. I'll put the link to his course. If you're on YouTube, it'll be right down below here in the notes. Same if you're listening at home, on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, wherever you're listening to your podcasts, to make sure that you can get in contact with Justin. I would definitely give him a follow, on Instagram as well. Justin, thank you very much. I really appreciate you. Have a great trip with your daughter. I look forward to seeing you in person very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill.